Hello everybody, how's it going today? My name is Glowplasma, and today I'll be covering Kagurabachi chapter number 112. That was weird. I don't know why I did a different intro this time, but I guess we're doing a different intro, being that we're going into a new part of the series of Kagurabachi. Of course, there is no point to sugarcoat it. At the end of this chapter, we get the reveal that everything so far, everything from chapter number 1 to chapter number 112, was just a prologue, was just the beginning. Was just Kagurabachi Part 1, and legitimately one of the coolest, final little sequences of a chapter to be like, hey, Kagurabachi, the title drop, Part 1, end. It was such an absolutely crazy moment to just, read, oh my gosh, look, I don't believe it. It's a title drop, and not only, granted, it's not like a title drop in the series, yes, this has been my most important sword that I ever made. My Kagurabachi. Honestly, I always wonder, where Kagurabachi is going to come up in the series, title, because, it's not like Naruto, where that's, the main character of the series, or Kaiju number 8, where it's, one of the big main ideas. Kagurabachi honestly feels like a title to me, like Bleach is, right? Because, I was about to say Jujutsu Kaisen, being that's, the most recent big series out of Jump in a very long time that's gained so much, mainstream following. And a part of that is, I'm pretty sure, it's been translated to Sorcery Fight. That's just what Jujutsu Kaisen is. But a part of that with Bleach as well is, what does Bleach actually mean for the story, right? Of course, I've heard a very good, take on it where it's well, Bleach is actually the white of the world, and of course, white is a part of Ichigo, and the black and white, and turning it all, and the Soul Reapers wear white uniforms, and just as all, or the captains do at least, I guess most Soul Reapers actually wear a black coat and all of that various stuff. But you know what, before I sound very, very stupid, let's just go into get on talking about this great chapter of Kagurabachi. But of course, before we can talk about that, we need to talk about what happened last time in Kagurabachi. And very simply put, Samura, good old Seiichi Samura, lost his life. Soga Akemura went through, cut him down, and Samura faded away, but not before giving his daughter a little parting gift of Tobimune. And of course, at the very end of the chapter, Shiba also teleports Chihiro out of the way, and Akemura's like, damn it, I should have killed that kid there. And we actually don't open up this chapter really in relation to anything. As the first page of the chapter, we just see this dingy alleyway somewhere in Japan. We see there's a few signs on the wall, air conditioning units, just all of these wires spreading out from building to building, tightly woven and not really woven at all. And we just see that there's a bar called Bar Uranako, as we see some text that says 4 days later. And we see in one of these bars, down a flight of stairs and hidden away in a back room, is none other than the Masumi. And we see Ro is here. He is reading the good old newspaper, and he's just thinking man, 4 days ago, really? And since then. As we now cut outside, as we see what the newspaper he is reading says, Return of the Hero, Swordmaster after 18 long years of silence. Sogen confirmed not dead. Regime has been false. Declaration of war for peace. Those are just all of these small excerpts we can see on this newspaper. As you also get a little image of a radio playing a news broadcast to all of Japan, as it sort of just says has issued a declaration of war. Will we no longer live in fear of evil? Just what does the future hold for Japan? As we also see Akemura wielding the Magattsumi, just floating up in the streets, all of these Japanese citizens around sort of looking up oh my gosh, it's him, it's the Swordmaster. We thought he was dead. Oh no, wow, he's actually not. And with all of that as well, we see that the paper that Ro is reading has the giant hole that, of course, be caused right above the Kobnabi HQ. It honestly looks like the exact same panel from the manga, just but on the newspaper, which is honestly pretty funny. But hey, it's a picture. I get what Hokazono is doing here. But as all of this happens, we see that Ro is just reading the newspaper, and he's the Swordmaster. Damn it, right? As he just starts to give us a little bit of narration, is hey, We couldn't get a read on the situation to Kabnabi HQ, so we only sent a signal out to Chihiro. We didn't get a response, but we couldn't put Iori in danger any longer. As he sort of looks behind him, we see that Sumi is sitting here at a little bit of a table. Moku is sitting just like on a couch, like sort of leg on the other one, just like chilling out a little bit, even with all of this like utter death and destruction that's currently going on. As he looks back to Iori, who is sitting at the same table as Sumi, and we see right up next to her is none other than the Tobimune Enchanted Blade leaning up right beside her head. And we see that Rose sort of like looking behind him, checking all of this out, as suddenly the door to the bar starts to open. And Moku looks over because he's right next to the door, starts to pull out a weapon, as we see somebody start walking through. Dress shoes, and oh, look at that. It's a very scarred up Chihiro in the moment. And we see that everybody's like, Chihiro, like, you're okay. And Chihiro walks in, only thanks to Mr. Samura. And Rose like, yeah, and Mr. Samura? And Chihiro is just silent. And we see that Moku looks dread on his face. Sumi looks over. And of course, Iori is sitting there, and it's honestly a very brilliantly drawn panel. Like, we see Iori sitting here and, like, trying not to quiver, like, her lips and all of that. Like, her eyes tell the entire story. As Ro just looks at me like, don't tell me he's dead? And Chihiro just nods in silence, and he says, I held the key to the battle. That is why we lost. So Mr. Samura sacrificed his life to save us all. And Ro is not taking this news well, neither is Sumi. And over in the corner, Iori's just like silent and like, no, but isn't there like anything we can do? As she's just holding this blade, trying to bring it closer to her body as she's sitting here. And of course, Sumi looks back and is like, Iori, I'm so sorry. And Chihiro just in the background, and it's honestly the most comedic part of this chapter, as he's like, there is. And we get a focus on Sumi's eyes as she looks around like, what? And Moku's like, what did you say? And she's like, wait, did he say like, there is? And Rose like, no, he couldn't have. And Chihiro's like, there's still a chance. And all of the Masumi and Iori look over at Chihiro. They're like, well, tell us more. As Chihiro starts to explain, he moves over to the bar and sort of like leans on the back foot. He says, in the end, Mr. Samura used dark power. And Rose like, dark, like, please speak English here. As Chihiro's like, hey, it's an esoteric realm of the Enchanted Blades my father couldn't even fathom. A power that sacrifices life, in other words. The Enchanted Blades' ultimate arcana. Only the Shinichi, also known as the Magatsumi, constantly commands that power. But the other Enchanted Blades always had that potential. Mr. Samura burned up his own life to use the ultimate arcana and turned to ash. And Rose like, and like, what is that supposed to mean? As she was like, well, I once died by Tobimune's power, and thus I was revived. If he had simply died, that would have been another matter. But Mr. Samura, and Sumi sort of finishes his sentences, well, Mr. Samura turned to ash by Tobimune's power. And she was like, exactly. Then by the same exact power, by using the same dark flame again, then maybe, just maybe, Mr. Samura could. And Rose like, interesting. She was like, no, I mean, I can't be sure. It could just be all wishful thinking, but there's grounds to believe that. Mr. Samura never gave up on his life with you. As Chihiro turns his attention to Iori, who's now looking up at him wide-eyed, and we just get a few shots on her eyes, like just really hitting it home how much belief and hope that Iori wants to have that this is the case. And we also see that Rosen, like, but what you're saying is it's a life-sacrificing power, right? So wouldn't we also probably need to sacrifice somebody in order to use it? And she was like, no, I used the dark power once. But at the time, the enchanted blade sacrificed itself to wield that power. Of course, remembering all the way back in the day whenever Chihiro told Cloud Gouger to lock in, and of course the hilt of the blade disintegrated there in the moment after using the black flames, or the black electricity of Mei, right? As Chihiro then is just like, well, think about it this way. The enchanted blades have sort of like a conceptual life. And Ro's like, so what you're saying is that if we sacrificed Tobimune itself, then maybe we could use that dark power again? And Moku's like, well then, like, what are we waiting for? And she was like, no, it isn't possible right now. It has to be at the brink of death. For Tobimune to use the dark power, we first have to break it. As Iori just sort of now stands up in the moment and looks over at the Tobimune in her hand, then she just stands up and brings it down, trying to crack it across her knee here in the moment. It's just like a whap that sort of gets made in the moment. And we see that Sumi walks over and she's like, oh, your knee is like, is everything okay, Iori? And she's like on the ground, just like, oh, that hurt a little bit. And she's like, hey, let me handle this. I know how to break an enchanted blade. I'll need. But Ro then cuts him off as he sort of says like, hey, what you need is this, right? It fell to the earth with Tobimune. And she's like, yes, that's exactly what I need. The Swordmaster's goal is to destroy evildoers, but it isn't clear how widely that applies. For now, everyone involved in sealing away the enchanted blades and anybody close to them are in hiding, and you all should lie low. And Ro's like, then what does that mean about you? As Chihiro looks down, unraveling this piece of paper, or this cloth that Ro handed him. Well, Mr. Samura left this to me. I'll take this spark and make it bigger. As he unfolds it, and we see the tip of the intin right here, and of course it disintegrated in front of Samura, and we didn't know what happened to it, if it ended up rewinding whenever it was fading away, but it looks like, of course, Samura used the Flames of Suzaku to repair it, and in progress of that, it got sent all the way back over to Chihiro, right? Which, hey, that's a little bit of a cool thing there. As now we cut away as Chihiro just looks at the intin tip. As you then look at Akimura, standing over all of these people. And he just hears himself, and it almost sounds like his enchanted blade is ringing out once more. As Akimura remembers some words that Samura said to him right before he died. This is your curse too. And Akimura just thinks, curse? No. What I got from the war was a lesson. As we just see a panel of a small child, a baby, swaddled up in clothes, laying on a blood-soaked ground, and tiny black hair upon their head. As we then cut back over to Chihiro, and we see that he's up in the mountains. We see he's going towards a workshop, one that he knows quite well. And he walks in the door, putting a cap on top of his head, and he's like, all right, here it goes. And he walks inside, and of course, he's at the Rokuhira blacksmith shop. Chihiro looks around, he's like, oh geez, like, what am I supposed to do here? As he remembers back to his father, as Kunishige is like, hey, all these enchanted blades, well, just remember, they aren't necessarily the right answer. As Chihiro goes in front of him, and he sits down in front of the iron coal forge, and he just thinks, from here on in, I'll have to see the world with my own eyes. And we get a focus on Chihiro's eyes, and also the fire in the moment inside this brilliant stove. And he remembers to all of his enemies, Sojo saying, their one purpose is to take lives. Chihiro opens up the door of the stove. Hyuki saying that there's no way they should be used for the interest of one single individual. Kiora at the auction. The Shinochi enchanted blade! This sublime masterpiece! And of course, Chihiro's mind gets taken to the Shinuchi. And of course, a man who tried to wield it, as Iori screams, "Your father created this world!" And Chihiro just thinks, to what end? As he thinks to Akimura, "I'll kill all the evildoers." And Chihiro just thinks, what kind of blade should I make? As we look over to a desk in the workshop, all manner of pencils, papers, and I guess just like books as well, like just so many things on top of this table here. As you just see what Chihiro has been planning here in the moment, the hilt of the Inten and the blade itself. And of course, the tip of the Cloud Gouger. We saw the base get used, but the tip still has a little bit more power left. And circled and highlighted in so many fashions, we see the words written, New Inten and New Cloud Gouger. As we start to hear the clang ring out from the workshop, as Chihiro's sitting there working, he remembers back to his father, back to whenever Chihiro was telling him, "Hey, I'm serious. I'm not joking about becoming a swordsmith. I just want to follow in your footsteps." And Chihiro grabs the hammer and just thinks, "Dad, I'll surpass you." As he swings the mallet above his head, bringing it down and hitting the metal, forging it in the moment. Kagurabachi, Part 1, End. And that's where we end the chapter of Kagurabachi, on this legitimately so cool of a page where we see Chihiro raise the hammer above his head, or mallet, whatever I'm calling it, the Kagurabachi logo, then Chihiro slamming it down on the ground as we get the words Part 1 End. Just, oh my gosh, such a cool little sequence of a chapter. And I think this is just a really fun chapter, don't get me wrong. And it works in this way, but it doesn't work as an arc conclusion. I was recently on a podcast, of course, the Kobnabi Headquarters podcast. And on that podcast, we had, or the most recent episode, we had two special guests on, Shiny Number 1 and Tiberius. And Tiberius made a very interesting comment whenever we recorded that episode of, this chapter is just like a really cool chapter, but it's not a good, like, wrapping up of an arc chapter. Like, we still have so much unanswered here in the moment, and yeah, while it's really cool to see Chihiro go through and reforge a blade, I would have liked to see more with Iori, and it's nice that we do cut to Iori, set these stakes back in this comedic tone as Chihiro's like, yeah, there's a way we can save him, and everybody's like, wait a second, you said that Samura may not be dead? And of course, with that, Iori just like a little bit of a joke of her taking the blade and beating it over her leg. And there's just a few other issues, like, we never really followed up on, like, what's Hirohiko up to? What are any of these other characters in lieu of the massive battle that happened? Where is Yuri? Is he, like, recovering his wounds? Like, we're going to have to wait a little bit longer to figure that out as well, because Chapter 113 has come out, and we now know what our next arc is in the story, and, well, I don't particularly think that we are doing typical Kagurabachi stuff for a little while. We're getting a little bit of a flashback. Oh my gosh, spoilers! Oh no! But of course, we have a bonus chapter in between all of that as well. And it's such a cool and interesting detail of not only Chihiro trying to forge a sword, but also like new Inten, new Cloud Gouger, and just a fun moment, sort of bringing it all full circle a little bit, but with so many unanswered questions that we're just going to have to wait for part 2 to get answered. With all of that, we also have the question of, who is this child that Akimura remembers seeing on the ground and all of this, like, blood-soaked aura and, like, just all of this area? I honestly just have no idea who this could be, but being that we spend a whole page on this image, it's gotta have some really important occurrence, and, well, we're going to have to figure that out at some point, right? But to be honest with you, I really don't have too much else to say about this chapter of Kagurabachi. There's a lot of stuff going on here, and a lot of small details we do get wrapped up. Is Samura going to be coming back at some point? It makes sense if you set it up now, then some payoff has to come to it. Like it's Chekhov's gun, but in chapter number 112 of Kagurabachi. If you set up something in Act 1, which is Part 1 in this scenario, you gotta pay it off later. So maybe in, like, Part 17 of Kagurabachi, we'll see the Samura return arc. who knows, Kagurabachi may get that far. But with all of that being said, I really don't have too much else to say. Just a good chapter of Kagurabachi, not the best arc wrapping up, but from like a standalone viewpoint, damn, this chapter was nothing short of just a treat for all of us fans who've been reading this series since chapter 1 like I have. And yeah, gosh, with all of that being said, thank you guys so very much for watching this video on Kagurabachi chapter number 112. All of that being said, if you want to see my thoughts on Kagurabachi chapters from long ago, I started covering this series on chapter number 44. I mean, you can find my thoughts from really early on in Kagurabachi, but I don't even recommend my chapter number. Like, I honestly say if you want to hear like my best Kagurabachi content, maybe check me out about chapter number like 60 from there on up, you know? But maybe even, honestly, I'd say maybe 80 on, and we're going to be doing okay with videos I think are still watchable by the general audience. But yeah, all those videos will be in the description box of this video and on the end card of this video. And yeah, let me know your thoughts on this chapter of Kagurabachi, man. It was a crazy one, and God, just part 1 is done. Insane. I'm so glad I wasn't spoiled for this. And yeah, with all of that being said, I'll catch you guys next time for chapter number 113. No, not 113. 112.1. Until then, I'll catch you guys next time. This is Glowplasma signing out.